Okay, chefs, in this chapter we're going to tackle cream soups. Specifically, we're starting with cream of asparagus soup. Okay, we'll start with onion or shallot, the actual main ingredient of the soup, which is the asparagus itself. This is our little secret enhancer at the end. These are our aromatics and flavoring. This is the trimming of the asparagus spear. We're going to add that to vegetable stock, and that's going to be the base liquid. We're going to use flour, and we're going to use butter. This is going to be our roux, and of course at the very end we're going to finish with a little bit of heavy cream. All of these soups are essentially bechamel or velouté based, which means we're cooking a roux or a liaison of some sort. Almost always a roux, not always. We'll get into that a little later. There are some other thickeners that we can use, and we'll talk about that in a bit. I prefer to use this one. It's the classic, and it just works the best. First thing I'm going to show you very quickly is where did I get this ingredient? These peelings, asparagus peelings. That's where we're going to extract a ton of flavor. These are from the rough, knobbly outside of the asparagus. So, if you're making asparagus soup, certainly once you get past the tiny little, what we call pencil asparagus, which really is beginning of spring, once you get past those beautiful little asparagus, the vegetable changes. It's different in size and in texture. The outside of the asparagus is essentially inedible. You don't want to be eating it. You don't want all these little things sticking in your teeth or in your throat. So what we do is we peel them. Now, you don't hold an asparagus and try it, you'll break it every time. So what you do is you set her down like so, and we pull our peeler toward us just like that, holding the head, or tip if you will, of the asparagus. Okay, and we end up with all these lads right here. You see them right here. They go into my peeling pile. My peeling pile. This end of the asparagus, this woody part, unless you're building a cabin out in the backyard, useless. We cut these into small pieces. All of the asparagus is going right now into my butter. A little bit of onion just for flavoring, not a lot. Remember, the asparagus is the star of the show. You're going to see very few other ingredients here. The asparagus is the man. When you're doing a cream soup, you want that soup to taste like that ingredient. That's the most important thing. So we're going to braise this a wee bit in the butter. Let it stew in the butter just a little bit. We got to be careful that we don't want to remove too much color. What we're going to do is, by doing this first step, we are going to intensify the flavor of the asparagus. On top of that, we are now going to take all these trimmings over to the stove. I've got a pot of vegetable stock working. I'm going to take these trimmings, I'm going to drop them in, and I'm going to extract as much of that strong green asparagus taste as I possibly can into my stock, and that's going to be the liquid that I use once my roux is built. So, without further ado, as they say, let's hit the stove. We're going to get this on to stew, and I'm bringing this lad over because I'm putting it into my stock pot. Okay, chefs, here's what I'm doing now. I'm on a medium heat right here. I've got my butter, a little bit of aromatic, the shallot onion, and all of my asparagus. We're going to begin to sweat that right there for a moment. Okay, now I told you, this is my pot of vegetable stock right here. Let me show you. This is vegetable stock. Now, I'm going to put my asparagus trimmings in there, but before I do, I want to show you a wee trick. So this is the parsley and the spinach leaf, okay? I'm going to bring this up to a fast boil real quick, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to blanch these. I'm going to blanch them, and then I'm going to drop them straight into my ice water. Obviously, what I'm doing there is I'm shocking these aromatics, because what's going to happen is these are going to help me add some of that beautiful vibrant green back into the soup without hurting the initial flavors, because both the spinach leaf and the parsley are very high in chlorophyll. Both flavors go great with asparagus, so they will actually increase the asparagus taste and just the overall savoriness of the soup. You can see we're boiling nice and fast. Just drop it in real quick. By the way, another great trick with this, what I'm doing right here, if you add a little canola or a flavorless oil and throw all this into your food processor, you will come out with a great herb flavored parsley oil that again will have a lovely vibrant color. I'll wring that out nice and dry, give it a quick chop. I put it at the very end into my soup. My stock is going back up to a boil. I'm adding all my asparagus peelings in there. There we go. Now let's just let that simmer for about 20 minutes till we extract all of the flavor out of those peelings. While that's happening, we're already starting to sweat there. Okay, now remember, as I said, I really want the flavor of asparagus in my soup. I don't want it to taste really of anything but intense asparagus flavor. So that's why you don't see me messing. I don't have a lot of flavoring agents in here. The asparagus itself is going to stand alone. And it's a rather delicate vegetable, so we don't want to give it all kinds of enhancements that are going to take away from the original flavor. Okay, let's just let that work. Now, as you can see, the butter is virtually all melted and our asparagus is starting to stew. It's still really quite hard and firm, but it's at this point and you can see what's happening here, look. So the stock is simmering and it is extracting, you see the change in color, it is extracting all of the essential oils and the flavor. It's incorporating it right into our vegetable stock. Beautiful. And remember, vegetable stock is something that we covered in an earlier chapter as part of this course, so you should have that one down pat. Okay, here we go. Now, flour. Just a wee bit to start. And again, you're using virtually 50-50, half flour to half fat, always. Cream soups can be thickened in a variety of ways. One of the ways is, of course, the regular roux, as you can see right here. Another method is through, as in a veloute style, but it has really gone out of fashion and it doesn't really work for us because of the amount of time we have to hold the soup, but I will bring it up. Another way to do it is with a mixture of egg yolks and heavy cream that are mixed together. They are tempered with stock and then added. But again, that is not something that's either necessary or common anymore. That's sort of an old classical way of doing things that really is not popular anymore. But you can see we're developing the roux here. You just got to be careful that we don't scorch on the bottom. That's super important. So you keep it moving, but you can see the flour is now starting to coat the vegetable. Another way to thicken your soup is with what's called a slurry. Okay, a couple of different types of slurry, the best of them being either cornstarch or arrowroot mixed with a little bit of water or stock, added as the liquid is boiling. That will then thicken. That is a way to do it, not my preferred way. Another type of slurry is to add either oil and flour mixed together in a bowl or flour and water mixed together in a bowl. They will work. However, there are some major drawbacks of doing that. That is my least favorite way. What are the drawbacks? Well, you see how I'm getting all the bottom off there? The drawbacks of using a flour and water or flour and oil slurry is that the flour is raw. And that means that you are going to have a slight aftertaste. Let's turn that down. You're going to have a slight aftertaste if you do that because the flour, as I said, is raw. You haven't cooked that out, and it's important that you do. As you can see right here, we're cooking the flour out. This is turning into a blonde roux. The other problem that you have if you don't cook the flour out and you're doing a raw slurry, it won't hold up under proper heat. You know, our soup must be at 165 degrees minimum. You can't hold a slurried soup for very long at more than 165 degrees without it separating. That's what's going to happen. The fat and the flour will divorce. This is now ready to accept liquid. We're going to put our little colander in here. And we're going to start adding the asparagus flavored vegetable stock. Just like so. Beautiful. Now, while I'm at it, I'm also going to give you an alternative method to make this identical soup. You can make the roux separately. You can cook the asparagus separately, and actually you can puree it, and you can use it in that fashion. You add the pureed vegetable, in this case asparagus, to the finished bechamel or velouté. It will give you the identical result. And actually, I mean, it's intensely asparagus. That's what you smell. If you scorch the bottom of any cream soup, start again. There's no saving it. There's no salvation. You can't put a potato in it or squeeze lemon or say goodnight. It's out. Start again. The creaminess of the soup is established through the cooking process. The cream at the end is simply to give it a beautiful satiny finish. If you add too much cream, you reach a point where you're actually eliminating the flavor of the soup you started with. The other mistake people make, if your soup, which tends to happen with cream soups, when we hold them for any length of time, they become too thick because they continue to reduce in the heat. That being the case, you thin them with stock or water. Maybe a little bit of water with some base added to it to give it a little extra flavor. You don't thin it with cream. It has the opposite effect because as the liquid leaves the cream, it really pulls the soup together. So you're actually doing the opposite of what you wanted to do. And again, the biggest sin of all, you're removing the flavor of the soup. Now, when we put the immersion blender, because obviously that's how we're going to finish this soup, we want this soup to be silky. We want it to be smooth and silky. So we will do the immersion blender, and then, as I say, strain, strain, strain. We're definitely going to strain this soup because I don't want any stubborn wee bits ruining the residents' enjoyment of that soup. Smooth as silk, that's what we're looking for. Well, we want all the asparagus that is currently still a wee bit firm, we want that all to cook so it can soften to the point that when I do the immersion blender in there, it'll be beautiful and soft, it'll break down, and it'll become part of the soup rather than, as it is right now, chunks of vegetable floating around in soup. I will, however, taste it right now. Oh, it's delicious. I mean, it's very intensely asparagus, as it should be. But there's no bitterness. It's really, really tasty. And it's not going to need a lot of seasoning. You really don't need a lot of seasoning with this. When we add the cream, as I say, a lot of times after we do that, the flavor will mellow a wee bit. We might want to add just a touch of salt and pepper, but right now, because the stock was beautifully seasoned, this tastes really great right now. I don't know that we'll even need to enhance the seasoning on this because right now it's tasting great. Starting to thicken. Excellent. Okay, we're about to go into the final stage. All in all, this soup, we had it done in 40 minutes. I mean, it really is not, once the prep is, your mise en place is ready, it's a 30-40 minute soup, no problem. Okay, so what are we going to do now? I'm going to use the immersion blender. We're going to smooth this out. We're going to get rid of all the lumps and bits and pieces in here. I have a little bit of extra stock just in case I need it. We'll see in a minute. Let's find out where we are, shall we? Okay, now I've gotten a lot of the heavier stuff out. This, I'm now going to introduce my aromatics. This is the parsley and spinach that we blanched. We're going to get that in there. Again, it's going to be a nice color enhancer, and it will actually complement, that parsley will complement the flavor of the asparagus. Another thing to remember when you're using one of these immersion blenders, they're not just good for pureeing, they actually are very good for aerating and lightening the soup. So they're incorporating air, so you're getting a very luxurious tongue feel when you eat the soup. This is just about finished. I'm going to check for seasoning, and I'm going to plate this up in a rather elegant fashion. And you can see just how nice something as simple as a cream soup can look when brought to the table. So we're straining our soup. All those little rough bits and pieces are coming out. We're left with a gorgeous, silky smooth finished soup. My last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to taste this. I'm going to add a drop of cream to it. I'm going to bring it back to temperature, and I'm going to taste it again. That'll be my final product. Then I'm going to plate. Okay, so I'm going to take a little pinch of salt and a touch of white pepper, and this thing is beautiful. I'm going to add my final touch just to make it even more luxurious, but you can see it's silky smooth, and that's really all the cream I'm going to add. As you can see, the texture of the soup is simply gorgeous. It's velvety, it's satiny, and now we're going to make sure it's hot enough to serve. Always checking our temperatures. Always checking our temperatures. 191 degrees. That is some hot soup. Ready to go. Last taste. It's delicious. It's delicious. Okay, wonderful. I'm going to plate the soup, and we'll see what it looks like just before it reaches the table. And so you see, even something as simple as a plain cream soup. Take a quick look. Let me show you what I did. I took a French baguette and made a crouton. I spread it with a little bit of goat cheese, and then I topped it with some blanched asparagus tips. I made a little bit of creme fraiche and a touch of the oil that I made from the blanched parsley and spinach that I told you about. In conclusion, our residents love soup. Soup has been around since the beginning of cooking. Anytime somebody's dropped a piece of meat into a pot of water and figured out, hey, what do I do with the water? They invented soup. Every chef should be a whiz at making great soups. They all follow the same pattern. Once you know how to make one, you pretty much know how to make them all. Cream soups, you've got to have them. Your residents love them. It's how it's made.